12 years after the zombie apocalypse, the USSR satellite fell to Earth. Hello all. This is Jacobson and this is a brief retelling of the first and second episodes of the 10th season of the zombie series The Walking Dead. You can see the previous episodes at the links in the video description. As soon as this video gets 300 likes, I will release the next part. Also leave your comments, it will help promote the video. Have fun watching it.
In outer space, a Soviet satellite descends from orbit towards the Earth. He throws a walker ashore and Judith cuts him up, after which he joins Michonne, Daryl and the others at a combat training exercise on Oceanside Beach. Aaron leads the front line, armed with shields, to the wrecked boat, where Jerry and Ezekiel repeatedly open the hatch to let the walkers ashore. With organized efforts, the archers destroy the first wave, the Capinos, the second, and the melee fighters, the third. The walkers quickly break down the door, and the army finishes them off. Later, the group collects materials in the Oceanside settlement. Luke and Jules are flirting, shifting the ropes. Meanwhile, Michonne and Daryl are being praised with the results of their workouts. Tara would be proud, Daryl says. Nearby, Judith and RJ are playing with seashells. When they throw the shells on the sand, the Whisperer mask falls out of them. Aaron radioed Gabriel in Alexandria to warn him about the mask and suggested they lock themselves in. Instead, Michonne advises them to remain vigilant while they split up and look for new traces of the Whisperers. Aaron notices the walkers on the bridge and rushes to kill them. Michonne saves him and angrily reminds him not to cross the Alpha border. However, Aaron also reminds them of the people they have lost, and says that he is tired of being kind. Michonne repeats that he still needs to be careful. She radioed for everyone to come back, but Yumika informed her that they had found something. In the forest, they catch up with her and find an abandoned camp full of corpses and walking skins. Luke suggests that the campers must have been defending themselves from the undead, and Alden suggests that the corpses are unrelated. Aaron claims that one of the Whisperers has been here. In Oceanside, Michonne explains to Aaron that people can't be afraid because fear will affect society. Michonne then overhears Judith telling RJ the story of how Rick blew up the bridge to save his friends. He died and went to heaven, Judith says of the brave man in her story. Michonne cries and goes to them to hug them, saying that she will do anything to protect them. Suddenly there is an explosion, and everyone looks up to see streaks of fire falling from the sky. In Alexandria, Rosita does boxing while Eugene takes care of her baby Coca. He also entered records of the child's growth for at least 3 months and tells Siddiq about his results. Gabriel enters the room with a worried look. Meanwhile, Lydia is at school trying to learn to read with other children. The council enters the classroom to discuss the discovery of the Whisperer mask, and asks Lydia to leave. Outside, Lydia is practicing with Henry's staff. Negan is picking tomatoes nearby. Brandon is watching him. He asks her what happened, and Lydia tells Negan that everyone is on alert because they found the skin. Negan playfully warns her to be careful. Later, Siddiq puts the cook to bed, and he begins to have memories of meeting the Alpha. Dante is checked by another doctor and Siddiq assures him that he is fine. Back in the cell, Negan advises Gabriel to speak with restraint about the coming dangers for his people, so as not to cause panic. Gabriel asks if he should lie. No, don't lie, Negan tells him. At the very least, I'm talking about a small strategic omission. Outside, Gabriel orders his men to lock up the walls and double the guards. Suddenly, the same explosion is heard, and Eugene rushes to the radio to contact the Oceanside, demanding to talk to Michonne. At the beach, Kelly and Coney are helping Rachel and other Oceanside residents drag a net when Kelly nearly stumbles over a pile of nets, despite being repeatedly warned about it. Kelly tells Coney that she worries that her gradual hearing loss won't allow her to translate for her. Connie assures her that she will be fine and they should take their deafness as a superpower. Doc suddenly runs in, followed by Daryl. Kelly glances at Connie, hinting that she and Daryl are infatuated with each other, but Connie just rolls her eyes. On the dock and Daryl is looking at the ocean. They talk about how they were at the zoo. Then he was only afraid of birds. Coney approaches and brings Daryl a dog with a note. It seems you've lost something. He communicates with her, and she tells him that he speaks with a southern accent. Suddenly, Carol arrives on a boat. She awkwardly greets Ezekiel and quickly moves on to a conversation with Daryl, who hugs her. While they walk around the camp, Carol tells Daryl about her travels. He thinks she's looking for an alpha, but Carol claims she's happy that the past is behind her. Daryl then informs her about the mask he found and asks if she wants to help them in the search, but she refuses, telling him that she came only for a while. Daryl then takes them away on his motorcycle. Daryl and Carol are trying to track down a deer in the woods. They follow him when he stumbles upon one of the boundaries. Daryl stops Carol from shooting the wounded deer while it is being devoured by walkers. Daryl objects that he has crossed the border and they should not pursue him. Carol angrily reminds him that they never agreed on a border. After that, Daryl apologizes and they reconcile. He admits that he doesn't want her to sail away on the boat again, calling her his best friend. Suddenly, the same explosion is heard in the sky. That night, everyone gathers together and agrees to cross the Alpha border to put out the fire and prevent it from burning down the oceanside. They discover the remains of the satellite and begin to fight the fire. Some use water, others dig the ground to prevent the spread of fire before morning. The water ends when a herd of walkers approaches the group. Standing with their backs to the fire, the group prepares for battle. The group takes its positions and begins to fight off the herd. Several residents of Alexandria are coming to the rescue. Carol uses the walkers' leaking blood to put out the fire. Daryl throws an axe to cut down a tree, and it falls on several walkers. Later, the fire is extinguished, and everyone comes to their senses. Eugene asks Michonne if he can disassemble the satellite into valuable parts, and she reluctantly agrees, forcing everyone to help. Luke dissuades him because of the radiation, but Eugene insists that they are already surrounded by radiation and infected with something that turns them into walkers when they die. Meanwhile, Daryl and Carol walk to a cliff overlooking an empty ravine, where Alpha showed him a herd of whisperers. Carol still wants to leave tomorrow, but Daryl asks her to stay. As he leaves, Carol sees the Alpha coming out of the woods. She raises her head, and they look at each other with anger. In a flashback from 7 years ago, an injured woman wakes up in a wrecked car when several walkers begin to approach her. She tries to escape, but is surrounded and devoured. Among the herd, Dee walks with young Lydia, smeared with blood, to blend in with the crowd. When the walker bumps into Lydia, she drops her headphones and screams. They have to flee and seek refuge in an abandoned hospital, where they find a man in a ski mask. In the present, Alpha and Beta talk about their enemies and the fear they put on them. He says they should come back so they won't be forgotten, but Alpha is doubtful. Beta says he will never doubt her, and sets off to collect walkers for their herd with the help of 2 sisters. Returning to the past, where, explaining to the masked man that she is her daughter, they do not wish evil, he lets them stay the night. In the present, Beta lures walkers from the gallery. As he and the sisters lead the herd, Frances looks at the sun and begins to behave strangely. Her sister says she needs to focus. In the past, Dee washes Lydia in the bathtub. Lydia is frightened by the sounds of walkers, but Dee insists that she just listen to them. They sort through the supplies and eat. The masked man explains to Dee that he doesn't want to hear her singing and that the sound of the dead is the only sound he never wants to stop. In the present, Frances starts crying in the middle of the herd, which is why several walkers try to attack her. Beta kills them and says she will pay for it. At their camp, Beta throws Frances to the ground and orders the Whisperer to kill her. When she starts screaming that her son is in a better place, Alpha demands that they leave her alone. Beta follows her and says she needs to punish Frances. Alpha angrily tells him not to ask her questions and declares that he will never understand what it's like to lose a child. She then orders him to send Frances to a tent where she will be expected. In the past, Lydia tells Dee that she wants to be like her. Dee is thrilled about it, but asks her to stop calling her mom. Back in the present, Alpha meets Frances in a tent. She orders her to take off her mask and kneel down. Alpha grabs Frances by the head and causes a scream that can be heard throughout the camp, but eventually pardons her. While Frances goes to talk to his sister, another Whisperer asks if they should return to other communities. In the past, Dee walks through the corridors of the hospital and meets several walkers. She starts killing them, and a masked man joins her. After that, he helps Dee to open the carcasses of walkers, so that the blood can be used later. Jokingly, she decides to call him B and claims that it makes her A. When she tries to see his face under the mask, he demands that she leave at dawn and never come back. In the present, Frances tells her sister about how Alpha showed mercy and what it was like to talk to her. Sister Frances says she should forget about her son, how Alpha sacrificed her daughter for the pack. She also hopes that Frances will start behaving better. The next day, Alpha leads a group of whisperers into the field to gather more walkers. Suddenly, a satellite appears in the sky, and the herd begins to scatter. Frances sees a walker with a baby carrier strapped on, and she begins to have memories of how she abandoned her son. She runs to the Alpha and jumps on her, which enrages the herd. The herd approaches, and the sister pulls Frances away from the Alpha and throws her into the middle of the herd to be eaten. Back at the camp, Alpha asks Sister Frances if she regrets letting her sister die. She admits that she will always be faithful to the Alpha. Beta approaches and asks Alpha why she is calm after losing 3 people and a herd. Alpha, however, claims to be proud of this woman. That evening, Alpha declares the woman a Gamma, and the group praises her. Beta watches jealously from behind. The next day, Gamma asks Beta about his feelings. They both claim that they are empty, as the Alpha wants them to be. Beta then goes in search of Alpha to their old camp. In the past, Lydia wanders around the hospital alone. Dee wakes up and looks for her. She walks into the ward and finds photos of Beta with his face scratched out of all the photos. Beta finds her and gets angry that she's wandering around there. Then she kills a walker in a t-shirt with a smiley face when he comes out of another room. Beta loses his temper and starts destroying everything around. Lydia arrives and eventually stops him from killing Dee. He gets down on his knees when Dee comes up to him and declares, "We are the end of the world." She lifts his mask to look at his face and grins, seeming to recognize him. Beta doesn't want to leave her friend, and she declares that he won't have to, giving him a knife. Beta then begins to cut off his friend's face. In the present, Beta discovers that Alpha made a shrine to Lydia and lied about killing her. Alpha breaks down and says she couldn't have killed her daughter. She then destroys the shrine and begs him to keep Lydia's life a secret. He promises that he will keep it, and informs her that the enemy has crossed the border. Alpha smiles and says they will come back to teach them a lesson. Later, the Whisperers are moving through the forest with their herd when the Alpha notices something in the distance. She steps aside and looks at Carol, watching her from a distant cliff above a ravine that once housed a horde of Whisperers.